guys, welcome to my September reading wrap-up. I read kind of a lot of books this month. I mean, like, a lot of them were short, but it still counts. So we're just gonna talk about them. I mean, I did this last month and at least 3 people told me I should do it again. So here we are, you know? It's great. Okay, I will say, like, 4 of these books I started last month. So that plays into it, but whatever. Let's just get started. The first book I finished, Pride and Prejudice, my favorite. I love this book. What can I say? If you don't know what it's about, you should. If you've never read it, you should read it. I think it's worth it. That's all I have to say, you know what I mean? The next book that I finished, that I had told you guys I started, was The Strange Case of the Alchemist Daughter. And it's kind of like a retelling of a bunch of classics, but it's like the guy's daughters. You know what I mean? Like, it's the daughters of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, of Dr. Moreau, kind of. Dr. Frankenstein's girl. We'll call him her daughter. But anyway, it's all of these men who, like, created these monsters. And it's their story. It's the story of how they met and how they got to know each other and all of that kind of thing. It starts off with Mary Hyde, and her mom dies. Her mom has this mysterious bank account, and so she's trying to figure out what it's all about. She meets the other girls. They have their adventures. They're trying to figure out the mystery about the society that their dads all belong to. And it's kind of, if you can hear the background noise, deal with it. There's not really anything I can do about it. I'm so sorry. It was a pretty good book. I liked it. I listened to the audiobook. I don't know if I said that already. And I know that in my last video I had said I didn't know if I was going to read it because it was just kind of like a bit much for me. But I did finish it. I finished it and I liked it. It is a series. There's 3 books. I liked it enough that I would probably at some point read the second one. Or at least I would consider it. You know what I mean? The third book that I read in September was A Room with a View by E.M. Forster. I have it right here. This is actually 2 books in one. Howard's End I read earlier this year, and then A Room with a View I read last month. It is like this much of the book. I really like that book. I've learned that I really like E.M. Forster's writing. I really enjoy it. It's very, like, atmospheric, very just like, I don't know, you know what I mean? It's basically about this girl who is on a holiday in Italy with her cousin, but her cousin is like 50 and she's like 20, and her cousin is just kind of the worst, if you will. I mean, she's not like the worst, but like she kind of is. Anyway, it's about her time there. She meets some people. She meets this guy and she like kind of likes him, but she's like, I refuse to acknowledge this. And then she like goes back home and she meets this like proper guy and blah blah blah, and it's the rest of the story happens, you know? This is what I will say about these books. I really like them. I like the writing. I will read more of his books because I enjoy them. However, my issue is with the endings, and not that they're bad, but that they happen so quickly. And what I mean is, like, this whole first part of this book is just like the beginning of the story. It's like when she's in Italy, when she comes back home, what she's thinking, how she's feeling, like her everyday activities, her interactions, like everything. Like, the story just kind of takes its time in a good way. I really liked it. We get to like the conflict and the end, and it's like 10 pages long. And I personally thought it should have been longer because like the whole rest of the story took its sweet time. Like, I don't know. I feel like I can't fully say how I'm feeling without spoiling the end of the book for you. And so I'm not going to. But I just feel like he should have put more time into the ending. Like, how did we get here? What were the conversations? Like, we went from one extreme to the other extreme, and all we saw was leading up to the extreme. We didn't see it happening, and then we saw a year later. Like, give me some more of the in-between. Like, I'm here to see her journey. I'm here to see her face the conflict. I want to see the conversations that she has. I want to know why these people feel the way that they do. And like, I like, we kind of know why they feel the way they do, but like, I stand by what I said. Make the endings longer. And the first book, Howard's End, same thing. I really enjoyed the story. It was like taking its own sweet time in a really good way for me. Then like a big plot twist happened, and then there was like 10 pages of me being like, wait, what just happened? Did that actually just happen? And then it was like, oh my gosh, yeah, it did. And then it cut forward to a year later, and we got like 3 pages of a year later. And I'm like, I need to know how these people dealt with this. I need to know how they felt. Like I said, I need to know. I just need to know. But I can't. And so that's the only thing I did not like. Other than that, really recommend these books. I really like the writing. I had a good time. The next book I read was Soul Keeping by John Ortberg. I did also start this book last month. I read part of it and I listened to a lot of it on audiobook. I really enjoyed this. It talks about what your soul is. What does it even mean to take care of your soul? What does it even mean for your soul to be healthy, for your soul to not be lost? All of those good things. Really good. 10 out of 10 would recommend. The next book I read was this one. Okay, let's start off on a good note. It is Peter Rabbit and 11 Other Favorite Tales. I remember reading this book, or like other books like this, very specifically when I was a little girl at these one people's house in our church, and I would read them whenever they had church, and I really liked them. So I was like, let me read it again. Turns out I don't care. You know what I mean? Yeah, sorry if that's harsh. I'm sure they're really nice books for when you're in this age range, whatever it is. I don't even know. But I was just kind of bored. But it was short, so I finished it. You know what I mean? Then I read Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. I actually listened to it on audiobook. And I tried to read this book like a year ago. And I was like, kind of dumb. And I never finished it. I think I listened to maybe the first 2 chapters. Then I read a few of his other books and I really like them. Like, I love them. And they convinced me to try this one again. Because like, everyone that I've heard talk about it really likes this book. And so I was like, okay, let me give it another chance. I know that some of his other books started out kind of slow and I wasn't really sure, and I kept reading and then I ended up loving them. So I thought, let me give this one another chance, you know? And so I did. I listened and I was a little bit bored and I was a little bit like, why are you just really over explaining every single thing? It would like tell the story and then kind of like explain the story a little bit, and then it would go back into the story and then it would be like, oh, people are so anxious. Not like that, but kind of. And that part was like a little bit like, sometimes it was good, but I think it could have been like half as much of that and it would have been a lot better. I ended up listening to it on like 1.5 to 2 times speed for a lot of it. I'm not gonna lie. I was invested enough that I was like, I need to know how this ends. I know that a lot of his books get better as you go. But for this one, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of bored until like the halfway point. And why did I keep reading? I just decided I was gonna finish it. And then like towards the end, like the last hour or 2, I slowed it back down. So I could like really take in what was happening. By the end of it, I was into it. I was into the characters. I wanted to know what happened. Yeah, the thing is, he's just a good storyteller and he's good at talking about being a human and like what it's like, and you can like kind of relate even if you can't fully relate. The only thing is, in this book, I thought there was just like too many perspectives. There was just too many POVs. Oh my gosh, I never even told you what the story's about. Basically, there's a bank robber and there's a hostage situation, and these people are all held as hostages, and it's their story of getting to know each other and caring about each other. Yeah, it's about being human and connections, and how when you really get to know someone, like, are we even really that different? You know what I mean? It was just like a little bit too many perspectives and a little bit boring until towards the end. I like the ending. I thought the ending was good, but it's probably my least favorite book that I've read by him. But I'm glad I read it. The next book I finished, I started it last month, was Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools by Tyler Staton, I think is how he says his last name. Really, really, really love that book. It is about praying and living. But it like really changed a lot of my mindsets about prayer and about being consistent in prayer and how I pray for other people and what God says about prayer and just like the power of our prayers. Very good, would recommend. Another book that I finished this month, this one is called Invitation to a Journey, A Roadmap for Spiritual Formation by M. Robert Mulholland Jr. And this is a book literally about spiritual formation. And let me just tell you, I started reading this book a year ago, probably close to a year and a half. So what happened was I was reading it for a Connect group, and then I couldn't go to the last few times, and I just kind of stopped almost halfway through. And then later that year I was like, no, I will finish this book. And so I started over because I didn't really, I just wanted a refresher and to know where I was at. And then I got like 10 pages further than I was the first time, and then I stopped. So I was still determined. I said, I will finish this book. I know that I am really liking the first part of it, so I will finish it. And so I got the audiobook, and I would read it and listen to it. And I finished it. Praise be. And this, let me tell you, like, okay, this book, The Soul Keeping, he explains like complex and deep thoughts and ideas in a very easy to read way. It is easy to take in, and it still hits where it needs to hit. This book also hits where it needs to hit. It took a little bit more processing energy from me. I don't know if that was good grammar or not, but it's the truth. But it was really good. He talks about how we all are born with like our own specific personalities and preferences in life, but also like when it comes to our spiritual lives and when it comes to our formation. And he talks about how God transforms us into his image at the point where we are most unlike him, which makes sense, but that point also happens to be the opposite of our preferences. Basically, he talks about how the opposite of our preferences is not bad, and indeed we need to learn to grow in those areas. We don't have to like force ourselves to like prefer those things or to only do those things, but like in order to be complete and whole and mature in our spiritual formation, we also have to develop those areas that we are not strong in. And so he kind of like walks us through spiritual formation, like what it looks like and how to develop the weak sides of us, the weak parts of our person, of our being. And it's very good. I would highly recommend this book also. The next books that I read are very much different vibes from that one. I found them on Kindle, and they are The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon, which, what a name, by Beth Brower. It's a 7-book series. I read the first 2, and let me tell you, I gobbled them up. It's basically, Emma is this girl who's living in, I think, the late 1800s in London. She lives in this house that legally she owns, but her crazy uncle lives there. He is like crazy and he hates her, and it's about her life. It's written in the form of her journal. It's like I'm reading her journal. It is like not that deep, not that serious, but there's a lot happening. There is drama, there's fun people. She's such a fun character, and I just really enjoy reading it. I will say, when I started reading the like diary book, a little part of me was like, who is even this detailed in their diary? Like, this is not realistic. But then I remembered my sister Eva, and I realized that it is realistic. Then the last book that I'm going to talk about, I technically finished on October 1st, but this is my channel, I make the rules. I read most of it in September, And I didn't want to wait a month to talk about it because then I would probably forget how I felt and everything. Anyway, it is called Cuu Land. Cuu Land? I don't know. It's called that, by Anthony Doerr, I think is how you say his name. This is the second book I read by him. The first book I read was All the Light We Cannot See, and that was very good. I would highly recommend that book. This book, also pretty good. I wasn't sure about it in the beginning, I'm not gonna lie. So this is kind of the synopsis. This is a soaring story about children. Okay, I can't talk anymore. A soaring story about children on the cusp of adulthood in worlds in peril who find resilience, hope, and a book. In the 15th century, an orphan named Anna lives inside the walls of Constantinople. She learns to read and finds what might be the last copy of a centuries-old book. Outside the walls is Omer, a village boy conscripted with his beloved oxen into an army that will lay siege to the city. His path and Anna's will cross. In the present day, in a library in Idaho, this 80-year-old guy Zeno, that's not what it says, I'm paraphrasing. This 80-year-old guy Zeno rehearses children in a play adaptation of the same book that Anna found. Tucked among the library shelves is a bomb planted by a troubled, idealistic teenager, Seymour. This is another siege. And then in the not so distant future, on an interstellar ship, is Constance, who is like alone in this vault, copying this same story on scraps of paper as she remembers it from her father telling it to her. And like, it's basically their stories over time, how they all connect, because of course they do. And it's really, I wouldn't say it's fun, because they're all like facing this trauma. And so in the beginning I was like, this is kind of a lot, and it's kind of like pretty like intense right from the start, and it's a lot of perspectives, and I don't know how I feel about it, but I kept reading it because I was intrigued. I will say I was intrigued, and this book like really drew me in. Like when I was reading, I was in it, and I really enjoy that kind of experience when I'm reading. Also, I will say I read this book because I saw my sister Rachel reading it, so shout out to Rachel. Anyway, that is all the books I've read this month. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you've read any of these books, let me know what you think about them, and if you have any recommendations for me, let me know. I think that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you probably, hopefully, next month.